Welcome back. It's your friend Mel Robbins. I'm so happy you're here with me today because we are getting to spend time with Tal Ben-Shahari. He's one of the most respected and prolific experts on happiness in the world, and he is the most popular professor to ever teach at Harvard. He taught positive psychology, and we're digging into 30 years of research and what research says about how you can be happier. We've already covered the definition of happiness as this sense of wholeness. We've talked about the 5 elements of happiness. He's made it very clear that this is not about checking boxes. It's not about achieving goals. It's about pursuing small 1% changes in these 5 areas of your life. And one of the most popular things you've ever put out online has 7 million views in less than a year. Don't chase happiness. Become anti-fragile. What does anti-fragile mean?
Yeah, that's one of those concepts that really made a difference in my life. It's an idea that I read about through the work of Nassim Taleb, who's a professor at New York University. And what is anti-fragility? The opposite of fragility, or I've come to look at it as resilience 2.0.
Okay.
So let's begin with 1.0. Resilience.
Please.
Resilience 1.0 is actually a term that comes from engineering. It simply means that...
Resilience 1.0 comes from engineering?
Resilience as a term comes from engineering.
See, that computer science, the classes you took,
Stands
they
in
helped.
good stead.
There you go.
Absolutely. So what it means is that if you have certain material and you put pressure on it, if it's resilient, it goes back to its original form. You squish, a piece of rubber, resilient, it returns to where it was before.
Yep.
A ball, you drop it, if it's resilient, it bounces back up to where it was before. So that's 1.0. What's resilience 2.0 or anti-fragility? You take material, you put pressure and stress on it. As a result of the pressure and stress, it actually grows stronger, bigger, healthier. Or you drop a ball. Resilience 1.0, it simply bounces back. 2.0, anti-fragility, it bounces back higher as a result. So that's anti-fragility. And it turns out that there are anti-fragile systems all around us and within us. I mean, think about it, for example, our muscular system. You go to the gym. You're putting stress on your muscles. What happens as a result of it? If you persist, you actually grow stronger, bigger, healthier as a result of that stress. We're anti-fragile systems, not just physiologically, also psychologically. And that's important. Most of the students in my class, not all, but most of them were psychology majors. And I would always ask them 2 questions. The first question was, put your hand up if you know what PTSD is. Just about everyone in the class put their hand up. They've heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. They've read about it, studied it in Psych 1, newspaper. People know what it is. Then I said, okay, put your hands down and now put your hands up if you've heard of the term PTG. Hardly anyone put their hand up. And again, these are psychology majors. PTG stands for post-traumatic growth. So whereas PTSD is breaking down, being fragile, PTG, post-traumatic growth, is being anti-fragile, growing as a result of trauma or hardship or difficulty.
How do you do that?
So here is the thing. This amazed me about the research, and there's a lot of research by Tedeschi, Calhoun, and others. Merely knowing about the existence of PTG, of post-traumatic growth, of anti-fragility, actually makes it more likely to happen.
Wow.
Why? Because what does knowing about PTG do for us? What it does for us is it actually gives us hope. Because, so I'm going through hardship, difficulties, I'm really struggling, but I can actually grow from this. So I become hopeful. Now, if you think about it, what is the main difference between sadness and depression? The main difference between sadness and depression is that depression is sadness without hope. Depression is sadness without hope. Because sadness, you
feel it every day.
Yeah, 10 times a day sometimes. Big deal. That too shall pass. But if that sadness is devoid of hope, that too shall pass, then that's problematic. That's when we become hopeless.
Yes.
And that's when we experience being helpless. And that's depression. So knowing about PTG gives us hope, makes it more likely to happen. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And remember, most people have never heard of these terms, don't know that it's even in the realm of the possible. So that's the first thing.
I love that, because the other thing that's happened, and I know that you see this too, is just the proliferation of short form content on social media has so much about identifying trauma. And it would be wonderful, especially based on this research, if there were just as many reels and social media posts about post-traumatic growth. That knowing that you are struggling with something is the first step to kind of knowing what you need to address, but being aware that you can grow through this and be stronger. And I think we all know this somewhere in the back of our mind. And even if I look back on my own life, Tal, and I think about like even a period in my marriage where my husband and I like wanted to kill each other. And we went to therapy. Our marriage was in the pits. We'd been together for over 20 years, and we were just having a lot of problems, and we were not feeling connected with one another. And I can see that if you're in a situation that's very difficult, whether you're grieving or you're having a relationship problem, or you've now just lost your third job or whatever it may be, and you add a sense of hopelessness to it, you've just driven a nail into the coffin and sealed it shut. It's the hope that it can get better that is what allows you to grow through it. And you're here to say that no matter what the traumatic experience or the heaviness of the emotion or the very real life experience that you may be living through right now, that just like a sun can shine through a prism and cast a rainbow, so too hope can shine through this experience and you can grow stronger. And even just knowing that in your definition of being a whole human being who takes care of self, that hope is a critical ingredient to you getting better. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And it's a critical period for you as an individual getting better. It's a critical element of a relationship, as you pointed out. It's also a critical element of national growth.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. I realized I didn't complete the whole thing, is that in working through it and having the really hard conversations and really exploring ourselves and sticking through the very hard, painful times, I have a profound sense of, in your definition that you are giving us, Tal, a sense of wholeness in the relationship and also a sense of wholeness with self. And it's true. If you really are listening to what Tal's saying and you reflect on your own life and you think about any moment in your life that was crazy painful, notice whether or not, as you moved through it, and you really are honest with yourself, that there was that bounce up effect that happens after it, as you move through the grief or the disappointment or the heartbreak, that all of a sudden you wake up one day and you weren't staring at the sun directly going, I'm going to be happy now. You were just slowly working on your well-being and you felt different. And as I really listen closely to what you're teaching us, I think that's what I'm starting to take away.
And I will add to that. And you know, you mentioned earlier about how knowing that you can grow from it contributes to your well-being. Just knowing that a gridlock or hardships, these are all natural parts of our evolution of life. You know, no one is exempt from these. No relationship, it could be the best, fairy tale relationship, they'll have their gridlocks. Just knowing that it's a natural part of a relationship, that is uplifting, because it's liberating, because you're saying, oh, okay, it's normal. And that's exactly what I felt after reading Schnarch and going through a gridlock with my amazing wife, saying, okay, so it's fine. That too shall pass. And that's what gives hope. And that is what becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because through that hope, you actually grow within the relationship or in another context.
It's so true. With the 30 years that you have spent researching this topic, is there anything that bubbles up from the research that is top predictors of whether or not you're going to have that sense of wholeness and happiness in your life?
The number one would be the belief that you can make a difference. Many people ask me, so what is the content of the course? Whether it's the MA or the certificate program, and they're always surprised that I say that at the beginning we start learning about systems thinking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and systems thinking,
For somebody who has no idea what that is, what the hell is systems thinking? No, seriously, like for somebody who's like, what's systems thinking?
Yeah, so systems thinking is about looking at things as wholes. So looking at the system rather than the symptom.
Oh.
So looking at the system, whether it's an organization is a system.
Yep.
The human body is a system. It's a system of, cells and organs. A system is all about interconnectedness. And the key in a system is to find leverage points.
Okay.
Where do I press? Where do I touch to affect the entire system? It's what Charles Duhigg talks about, keystone habits.
Yeah.
What is that place, one thing that if you do will impact another part of the system and another part? Is it exercising daily? Is it, starting your day, zone 1 of the day with deep breaths?
Right.
A meditation. Is it, leaving home and, hugging your loved one? What is that one thing? And when everything is interconnected, it actually doesn't matter that much where you enter the system because it will affect everyone else. This is why the emphasis on that one small action is so critical, because you can literally sit down and think for years about how I'm going to change my life, or you can just do it.
You know what is so cool about this is that visually speaking, between the rainbow example and this idea of systems and wholeness and everything being interconnected, in this model, traumatic experiences are connected to happiness. Sadness and grief are connected to happiness. Struggles and periods of feeling lost are profoundly connected to happiness. Why?
Painful experiences, difficult experiences are inevitable.
Yes.
Again, there is no life exemplary. But let's play a game.
Okay.
Let's imagine that sometime in the future, and by the way, this right now it's a theory, but it could become a reality. Sometime in the future, we'll have the ability to drive away all pain, because we'll have such great control over our neurons that we'll be able to control what we feel all the time. So,
why would you want to do that?
Well, why would you want to do it? Many people would, especially when they're in the midst of hardship and difficulty. All you want is for it to go away. Or what if you see your loved one, your child in pain? Maybe you can make it go away.
I just got something from you.
Do tell.
The reason why I had that reaction, I realized, is because I have the belief that pain disappears with time.
The hope.
Yes. Whoa.
And what if someone is doesn't have that? And
yes.
What if? And again, many people will make it go away. I mean, if you think about it, why are we so, as a culture, so obsessed with those pills? And again, I'm not against psychiatric medication, and sometimes it has saved lives. And I know some cases intimately where it has. However, we're too trigger happy when it comes to dispensing pills. Why? Because we want to make it go away. So if we play this theoretical game that we do get to a world where no side effects, because we know exactly how to make these painful experiences disappear, would we do it? But then what would happen? If you take a room full, I've often asked my students this. Think about the experiences that you are most grateful for in terms of where you are today, things where you have learned the most, that have helped you grow the most. Think about them. Now, put your hand up if there were fun experiences, enjoyable ones. Very few people put their hand up. It's almost always difficult experiences. Now, do you want to do away with that? Do you want to get rid of growth and learning? And this is exactly what will happen. if we don't have any of these painful experiences. So when you say they're part and parcel of a happy life, they're essential to a full and fulfilling life. And when we begin to look at these experiences as such, then our reaction can be similar to what you said. And I don't want to get rid of them. In fact, I don't enjoy them, but I embrace them.
Well, and what you're also offering is a roadmap of hope and action for anybody who's in the thick of that, who's like, give me the pill because I just lost my child. And I don't want to feel what I'm feeling. And what you're saying is that based on the human experience from the beginning of time, we are designed to move through these things. These emotional, painful, traumatic experiences are a moment in your life. And that if you look at that rainbow and you look at spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, or emotional wellness for yourself, and you take this MVI model of minimum viable intervention, and you say to yourself, two things can be true. This can be the worst thing that's ever happened to me and the deepest pain I've ever felt. And I can wake up in the morning and I can pick one of those categories and I can take one action in the SPIRE model forward. And that is a way to start to move through this and experience that wholeness that you're talking about, even though it's so difficult.
Yes. And you know, Mel, I want to share a story.
Please.
When I was 27, I lost the most important person in my life to me. At the time, it was a dear, dear friend who died in a plane crash. This was when I was living in Asia. It was a plane from Indonesia to Singapore, and it crashed. It was the 19th of December 1997. And I thought my life had ended at that moment. You know, we were supposed to meet in Singapore, and it didn't happen. And I called up a mentor of mine. His name is Nathaniel Brandon. Nathaniel Brandon has written many books on self-esteem. I'd learned with him, and I called him up for two reasons: A, because he was my teacher and mentor, and B, because he himself had lost his wife in a freak drowning accident when he was around a bit older than I was at the time. And I called him up, crying, and he knew my friend, so you know, he was very much distressed as well. And he said, "Tal, I'm going to tell you something now that you're not going to understand, but keep it in mind anyway." He said, "You're going to get over this. It's going to be painful. It's going to hurt like hell, but you're going to get over it. We all do. Because if we hadn't, then God help us all." And again, this was many, many years ago. I still remember it. And I remember it each time, even when I go through minor crises. Because we do get over it, because we're built to overcome hardship and difficulties. And sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes, you know, it's a day. But we do get over it, and having that hope and doing something with it. Again, not staying and moping and ruminating, writing about it, talking about it, doing small things. That is the way out of it.
Thank you for sharing that. Like I was trying to put myself in your shoes, because I think in the depths of that moment, I'd probably be like, fuck you. You know, I don't want to hear that. I'm not getting over that. You know what I'm saying? But it is true that we do get through the things that we never think that it's possible to get through. I'm also really curious, since you're constantly researching something and clearly writing a book, and you've got an academy and you're teaching people around the world, is there a particular piece of research or new kind of finding around happiness that really excites you?
So what I think about a lot is how do you bring about lasting change? Because, people are listening to us now and they're thinking, oh yeah, I want to do it. Or, I would give a lecture and, the audience would think, yeah, I'm going to implement it. But most times nothing happens.
Right.
Most change efforts, you talk about it, coming into 2024. So you have a goal and, a 30-day challenge, January, February. What happens with that? Usually not much.
Yep.
So what I think about constantly and what I'm researching is how can you increase the likelihood, not guarantee, but increase the likelihood that you will enjoy lasting change. And, I love acronyms, as you figured out, the SPIRE, MVI. So here is the third acronym.
Give it to us.
The 3 R's
The 3
of change.
R's. Okay. And we can use this with everything that you've taught us today in terms of being happier, a lasting change in your life.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's why the 3 R's, that's why it's so important for me to think about it, write about it, talk about it. The 3 R's of change are essentially the, should be the intel inside, so to speak, of every change effort.
Okay.
So what are they? It's not reading, writing, and arithmetic. Other 3 R's. It's the first R is reminder. I mean, think about it, Mel. So if I asked you this, tell me, is it important for you to appreciate the good people in your life, to appreciate whatever works in your life, or do you prefer to take it all for granted? Exactly. So, no one would say, I've had enough of appreciating my loved ones. It's time to take them for granted for a while. No one would say that.
Except for my husband in therapy.
That too shall pass. So, and yet, even though everyone would say it's important for me to appreciate, most people, this is an empirical fact, most people, most of the time, take the good things in their lives for granted.
True.
Do not appreciate their loved ones most of the time.
True.
Most people, most of the time. Now, it's not because they're bad people. It's not because they are not smart. It's not because they don't have the desire to appreciate. All these things are in place. The problem is that we forget. Which is why the first antidote to forgetfulness, or the first antidote to the absence of change, is reminders.
Yes.
And Mel, you talk about it. You talk about your Post-its.
Yes.
I love that. Create reminders around you, whether it's Post-its, whether it's walking around with a bracelet that reminds me of something specific,
or a rainbow. Like, I keep thinking about how much you've poured into us and how actionable everything is and understandable, that even if you were to write on a Post-it SPIRE, and it's a reminder of the 5 elements every morning, and you pop it on your mirror or at your computer at work, like, now it's in your face. And that's more likely, with the reminder, to help you go to the next star, which is what? Which
is repetition. Because 1 or 2 reminders, one day, second day, not enough.
Yep.
We need repetition. We need to do it over and over and over again. And for that, you need many reminders. So, for example, a recurring function on your calendar.
Yep.
Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm in the gym.
Yep.
And after you have repetition and you have enough of it, that is when we get to the third R, which is rituals. What are rituals? Rituals are actually deeply embedded neural pathways. That when we repeat an action over and over again, that action becomes automatic because neural pathways have been formed. Our brain has quite literally been transformed through the repetitive action. Simple example. Mom reminded me to brush my teeth over and over again, repetitively. Yep. I don't need mom anymore to remind me because it's a ritual.
Right.
It's the same with cultivating a tennis forehand. Initially, the coach reminds me, you get your hand up, meet the ball here.
Right.
And you do it again and again.
Right.
And then you wake up Serena Williams in the middle of the night. She'll hit that forehand.
That's true.
Perfectly, because it's a ritual.
Right.
It's a habit. There are neural pathways associated with that. Whether it's for hugging your loved ones, whether it's for acts of kindness, we can actually ritualize them. Now, to many people, this sounds like, the absence of spontaneity. If you ritualize things, I'm not against spontaneity. It's great. But if you want to bring about lasting change, the only reliable way that we know about is by cultivating rituals.
Robbins. I'm a New York Times bestselling author and one of the world's leading experts on confidence and motivation.
What was that?